Hello everyone, it is me, Phoenix Smith Gaming, or Phoenix for short. I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering about the Saki Gamer project and been also wondering why there hasn't been any updates on the project and why there hasn't been anything new on it. Well, today I'm going to finally explain to you all the things related to it, from the project being changed to why it's long waiting, and to even some new plans for other projects related to it. Also, sorry if my microphone quality is bad, as my headset is not really good, but you have to deal with what you got, I guess. Now, let's start off with the first question I'm sure a lot of people have been asking about. That question being, is the project entirely canceled? Well, to put it officially, no, it is not canceled. It's just that the project has been taking a lot longer to work on because of the many stuff related to it, with all the issues that have been related to it that happened. So, again, no, the project is not canceled. It's just taking longer to get even working right. Now let's start with why the long wait. Well, to simply put, I ended up losing the files for the project. This happened because my PC, or my laptop basically, ended up having issues where I accidentally forgot to even remember my PIN code basically. So I had to reset my PC because it had issues and I forgot the PIN code. So I ended up losing much of the files for the project. I still have the actual files, such as the sprite sheet for the project, but I don't actually have the actual code for the project anymore, which is a real big shame. Another reason why the long wait was because I couldn't find the time to make an updated video, or knowing that the project was considerably tough at the beginning because I didn't know much about coding and stuff, so I ended up putting that project on hold for a very long time. I mean, I've been trying to get a new updated video for it, but I've been busy so much because of it. So it's all that has happened. You may be wondering what's going to happen to the game. Well, now I have to pretty much rework the entire game. Now you may think this is a bad thing basically, but this might actually be a good thing because there's another thing related to this that I might bring up in this video that might shed some light why I'm reworking the game into something completely different. I mean, the game will still be the same, but it will still include much of the stuff needed for it to stay true. And also because I feel like my original vision for the game just didn't ended up working well with the actual project. I mean, with the actual source material basically. So I am indeed reworking the game in a way. Now, being that I'm reworking the game, I'm planning to make the game as close as possible to Chocat's original vision of his version of Saki Sanobashi. This makes sense because, well, there is some news related to his version of the project, that being that he actually canceled his animation project of it, basically. So for me, I ended up reworking my version of the game and instead use his version of the story so I can rework the game into his vision in a way. So in a way, it's like I want to complete his version of the actual story, which is interesting because his version of the story is much more interesting and stuff. So I want to basically use his story in a way so I can keep his version alive, basically, while somewhat shortening down just a little bit with my version of it. I mean, adding some of my elements into the story, basically. Also, being related to chocat, he actually gave me permission. Well, actually, I asked permission with him if I can end up using some of his stuff from the project into my game, basically. So, basically, he sent me a zip containing mostly all the resource used for the actual project, from concept art to actual shorts. Well, not shorts, mostly test footage of it, basically, storyboard, basically, and about so many versions of the actual story script, basically. So, basically, I'm using all that in a way again to make it close to the actual game, basically. Well, actually, close to his vision, basically. So, I'm using all that resources as a reference, basically. I still get credit to him when I actually do finish the game, and use his resource, basically, and basically keep the game close to his vision again as possible because I'm using his stuff as reference for the game basically. Now the one gameplay change I do plan to include basically in the project is something I like to call quick time event basically. So being that there's going to be so many interesting ideas from his version, being the whole idea of the lucid dream things and the whole depth things, I wondered how can I include those into the game as somewhat like a gameplay perspective basically. So I thought, why not include it as like a quick time event type thing basically. So basically I took it from many type of old quick time event games. Mostly I took in reference from other games like Dragon's Lair, mostly Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, basically those type of games where the whole quick time event thing basically. So I thought to myself, what if I include those things into the story as somewhat like a story element basically? So like, what if like there's one part in the game basically where, well, most of like one of the many lucid dreams, which is also considerably planned to be in the game. Also, what if there was like one of lucid dream where you're basically having this weird dream of Saki basically being chased by one of the other girls basically, or actually one of the girls being chased by Saki basically, and you basically are being chased down like a hallway basically, and you have to like hit certain buttons to watch out for stuff basically. So like this would definitely be kind of like a reference to the old creepypasta Wario head in Mario 64 basically. So it's kind of like that basically. And what about other type of gameplays? Well, with the whole mirror smashing head thing basically, that thing I would definitely consider like being also like a quick time event thing basically. So you would have to hit A or B basically to basically smash the girl's head basically. Now I would maybe scrap that basically because maybe that won't do well in a gameplay perspective in a way, but I do want to include that, as again I'm keeping things as much as possible to story element basically. And what other gameplay would I consider? Well, maybe I would try to maybe include one where the whole drowning one basically, where you would have to keep pressing A basically so much, well basically so fast to keep the girl underwater basically like that. So the quick time event things may be an interesting thing that I do want to considerably put in the game, so we can at least try to include some interesting gameplay elements with the lucid dreams, with the story, all that with it. Now you may be wondering, do I have any plans after this game is completely done? Well, actually yeah, I do basically. I do have plans for a sequel and a prequel basically in the same universe of Saki Sanobashi. Now you may be wondering yourself, how can I make a prequel and even more so a sequel to something that just has a story where the ending will just basically be that there's only one girl that is alive basically? Well, I have found ways to at least with the sequel include ways to get it to continue from where it left off basically. As for the prequel, that one's actually going to be based on one of Chocat's early scrap versions of his project related to Saki. That being that one version of it was a hotel scene basically of it. So I thought to myself, what if I can use that as somewhat like a prequel, which also can be connected to the first game, and then it can also continue from the sequel basically. So the sequel does plan to continue where the game left off basically. Well, where the first game left off. That being that basically Saki is the last girl alive basically, and being that basically that the door actually somewhat remotely opens basically, like the door just pops into existence basically. So the idea of the whole sequel basically, well, the sequel will take a different gameplay is that the sequel will be that now you have to control Saki and help her get out of the actual battle. But even so, when you get out of the battle, you find out that it's a labyrinth basically. So you have to like do different puzzles, different rooms and stuff, and explore different rooms and stuff. Yeah, like that, to help her escape there. And what the sequel also plans to include is the ghost of the other girls that were basically. So with the whole ghost idea, I thought to myself, what if I can use ideas like having the ghost girls chase you basically, kind of like something similar to something like say a clock tower basically, where at random moments basically, the girls would actually come and chase you, and you had to find a way to hide from them basically. Sure, that would make the story kind of different and would make the whole saki thing so much different basically. But this is my version of of doing a sequel in a way to the universe basically. Now, as for the whole prequel thing, well, again, I'm using Choki Chocat's early version, being the hotel one, as the reference for the hotel basically. And what games am I taking influence from doing a prequel basically? Well, actually, there's a few games I'm taking influence from the idea of the prequel basically. That being, let's see, of course I'm using Luigi's Mansion as sort of like a reference for both the sequel and the prequel basically. But it's going to be more basically focused in the prequel basically. And you might ask yourself, what will the story be in the prequel basically? Well, it would basically focus on some people basically, being that she enters this mysterious hotel basically, known simply as this early place or hotel I call, where it's basically called Bloody Hotel. This is still the early working title of the actual prequel basically. They really need to go a better title for it. But anyway, she checks into this hotel basically, and then she now notices all these strange things are happening in this hotel, and then she's trapped basically, so she has to find a way to get out of this hotel basically. So you could kind of think of this also as being like one reference to Luigi's Mansion 3 also, which had the same similar concept, I guess you could say. So the prequel does indeed, well, pretty much be like before the events of the actual first game basically, well, before the events of Sanobashi basically. So I want to include so many interesting stuff in the prequel so I can get people wondering what the sequel and the first one will be like without all those neat stuff basically. I also have plans to maybe include a director's cut version of my game. You see, there is going to be a few options for the game basically, so having a director's cut would be interesting because I can include all the unused stuff that Choki has from his artwork and stuff from the set basically, and I can include them into another version of the game basically. This director's cut will include all the unused stuff that I'm guessing was not used for the actual animation project, I guess. As for what system it would be on, maybe I guess it could be on the Genesis or even the Game Boy, I don't know, because it would be interesting nevertheless, as I do have Yoshi Viking who did the sprite edits for my Game Boy game, and I have his sprite sheets for that. I also have some other sprite sheets for another saki game he was working on, but he canceled it, so he gave it to me. So I can use those for a director's cut version of Saki for the Sega Genesis if I know how to program in that format basically. Now, I believe there's one last thing, or a few things I want to bring up basically related to Saki, and that being a scrapped idea that I would maybe consider including if I knew how to do it basically. This idea being the idea of a somewhat secret ending in any version of the game basically. So basically what I mean by any version, I mean any version of the ROM basically. So this was actually talked about from Choki Chocat basically, where he said that there would be different versions of the animation, where there would be different versions of the ending basically. So I thought to myself, would I considerably put the idea into the game version basically, and have different versions of the ROM where they would include different endings basically? So basically one option you did in one game would be completely different in the other game basically. Well, I would actually have considered including that in basically even the so-called director's cut version for the Genesis and even the Game Boy game basically. But it would indeed be interesting to include that basically. I would have to indeed look for someone who can somewhat do that for me basically because I'm very limited in the coding site for even coding in the Game Boy game for GP Studio basically. But yeah, that's one idea I would actually consider to include it in the game. Now you may be wondering, where will it go now basically? Well, to put it simply, basically the game is considerably still being worked on basically at the moment basically. And I'm wanting to look for a new team I can work on to basically help me get the game done in a way basically. I mean, the old team I had was Chocat and Yoshi Viking basically. Yoshi Viking was the one who would do the sprites, Chocat was originally going to be the one who would do the music, and I was the one who was going to just rework, pretty much build the whole game basically. Well, times changed basically. Chocat is busy doing other stuff basically, and I am just basically the only one now who's working on it. And I haven't heard anything from Yoshi Viking if they're still on board basically. But if there was any editors, basically anyone who is experienced in GB Studio or in Sprite Sheet and stuff, I would indeed want them to join my team basically so I can get the game finished in a way so I can move on to the other versions of the game. If not, then I'm gonna have to still do things by myself basically. But yeah, I finally have an updated video to you guys basically. Sorry for the long wait. So yeah, the game is still considerably being worked on. It's just running into so many issues. But I indeed swear that the game is considerably planned to ever be released at any time basically. I mean, I don't know when it's going to be finished. I don't know when I'm going to release it. All I know is that I do plan to focus more on the game and show off more stuff for the playing game, such as gameplay elements, screenshots, mockups, all that stuff the next time I do an update video on this game, or when I get the chance to, I swear. So I hope you all enjoy this video basically, and stay tuned because I swear to you that there will probably be another update video anytime that you may not know. So just make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and make sure to stay up tuned when another update video can come.